Next up is something I thought was pretty interesting, and it was cool to understand and figure out was how notifications work with mobile phones. And using Expo has a notification service that lets you send notifications. And so I'm going to walk through kind of the setup and then what happens to actually send a notification. So from the mobile phone perspective, you have to set up notification listeners. So there's a listener for when you receive a notification, and then a listener for when a notification is tapped. And that's where you put the logic for what to do in those either situation. But in order to, so the process for notifications when it comes to Expo services and mobile phones is you get a push token from Expo notification services. So in our flow, and I think typical flows is basically you get that token at startup. You get that token when you need it, right? So in our case is when a user is logged in. So either they're already logged in and they open the app, or they just log in, or they were logged out and they log in. So then we get the token in either of those cases. And so with that token, then we store the token in our table. And then I found out that in some cases there could be some weird reasons why, like somebody's account, they could have multiple tokens. Like maybe for some reason they switch phones, right? It's the same account. So that account could have multiple tokens. So we always check this. We always check the token produced by the phone, and we always push that token and we store it. And then in terms of sending notifications, so what you do is, so then Expo also has an API for you to send notification, and so you send a payload to notifications to the service, including the push token. And then in terms of like a mobile phone, what you do is for a user, you check how you basically all the tokens you have stored that are active. You're gonna send a notification to all those tokens because you don't know which one is the actual. You don't know what device the user could be using. So you send that payload to notification services. That then will send the notification to the device, and then using our listeners will process the notification. Now, in order for us to confirm whether or not the device received the notification, there's also a service, an API endpoint from Expo where you get it's called push receipts, and then you get a receipt for each notification that you sent. And so you check the receipt for your notifications to check the status. And then one thing that's important to recognize is in some cases, like there's something can happen basically where a token is disabled and a device is disabled, in that no notifications to be sent to the device anymore. So when getting the push receipt, we need to check to make sure that a device is not disabled from a notification perspective. If it is disabled, then what we do is in our database, we mark that token as inactive so that we won't send any notifications to it anymore. So that's it from a high level perspective. Looking at the code, let me pull that up. So I talked about, to get a token, there's an Expo service provided in React Native that allows us to get that token. I've wrapped around that. There's a method wrapped around that to get the token. So, I'm not going to go into all the code, but basically, we're getting the push token, and then we're pushing that to our endpoint that stores tokens. So that's what's happening in the front end in terms of getting a token. And so then I talked about the two cases where we're trying to get that token. Either the user's already logged in and they open up the app from it being closed, or they log in successfully. And so then we're also calling this service to produce the token and store it in our database when a user is logged in, which means that the access token or the refresh token is valid. The one that we have stored in secure storage. That kind of wraps up. And then, we have the listeners. The listeners we also have in context, because that's the first thing that loads with our app. And so then, we have the notification received listener. which is when we receive a notification, and notification is called a response received listener. That's when the user taps a notification. From the backend perspective, so when the token is produced, our client calls the register endpoint, sending the token, and we store it. And then when we want to send a notification, oh no, I have a misspelling. When we want to send a notification, we're using Expo services, and we're sending a payload, to Expo to help us send a notification. From a backend perspective, so when a token is produced, we store that token, and so the client is going to call our register endpoint, and then from that point on, a lot of the work happens in the backend. So depending upon an event that happens, right? If somebody gets approved, so a subscription is enabled, then we know to fire off a notification, and so we have a service to fire off those notifications. Calls Expo services, it sends a notification. If we have a situation where we need to send a notification, we do that. And then the other case I talked about is checking the status of a notification, which is pretty important because a device could be disabled. And then so we have a call, we have a service where we're tracking all the notifications that we sent, and we're essentially tracking the status of that. We have a table, and then we use that to know what to pull. Before we send a notification, we store that event in our database, and then we know, because we have that stored event, we know when we need to fetch push receipts. We know what notifications we need to fetch push receipts for. And then we check the status of the notification. And if successful, we have no need to keep the status, at least for right now. We might change that in the future. If it's not successful, we keep the error response so that we can analyze and address the issue.